Hi guys, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host Indira, and today I'm joined by Kate Axford. Kate dipped below 16 minutes for the 5k in her first few months of training. She's a former GB hockey player, now turned elite level runner. So there's definitely a story to unpack here. Before we get into it, if you've been enjoying the show, please be sure to give it a rating and review. It really helps the podcast out and helps me to keep bringing you great guests. Okay, let's get into it. Hi, Kate. How are you? And welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Indira. Thanks so much for having me onto the podcast. It's brilliant to be part of such a cool episode, hopefully, and really lovely just to meet you and chat to you.
Yeah, and likewise, we've had a great warm-up chat, so I'm sure, great things are to come in this episode. And so a bit of a complex question now, as, some of you may or may not already know. Can you introduce yourself as an athlete?
Yes. So, hi, everyone. I am Kate Axford, and I am a former professional hockey player, now turned kind of middle distance runner as of March of this year. So, a very kind of recent transition over to a completely different sport. And obviously, a transition over from being a full time athlete to now having the joys of competing and training alongside full-time work. So yeah, that is kind of me in a nutshell.
Oh, brilliant. Loads to get into later on. Okay, and so, we'll carry on with the warm-up questions. What is your biggest lesson learned from sport?
I think my biggest lesson that I've learned from sport is that you should always kind of have confidence in your own ability. And I think that there's been many times, and I'm sure kind of a lot of other people can attest to this, where you might not have felt like you were doing that well, or you kind of had someone tell you that you might not have kind of performed that well in that scenario, or you need to get better at this. And even though you kind of might have those messages that come towards you every now and then, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is actually to just keep having kind of belief in your own sporting ability, and that it will get you places, and you kind of will get better. But it's just, yeah, kind of in the back of your mind, knowing like you've got that drive and talent and kind of love for the sport. And that's definitely kind of my biggest lesson that I've learned from sport so far, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. Self-belief, such an important one. Okay, and what is the next biggest goal or thing that you hope to achieve?
So now I'm kind of transitioning into the winter season for running, which is again fairly new to me. So I've been kind of thinking about what I might want to achieve over the winter, and I think my kind of next goal, I would absolutely love to get a Great Britain vest and run for Great Britain in some form. I'm not sure how that will kind of play out, but that's definitely a goal of mine that I could kind of work towards this winter, which would be really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it definitely seems like something that should be a strong possibility. Okay, and so what is your number one piece of advice for your younger self?
My number one piece of advice for my younger self would probably be to care a little bit less about what everyone else thinks. It's hard as I think a female athlete in particular. You always kind of worried about what someone might think if you didn't play very well in that match, for the sake of hockey, or you didn't run that well in that race. And actually, a lot of the time, it's what's more important is how you see kind of your performances and how you feel about yourself. So I definitely would say to my younger self, like, don't care what anyone else thinks. It's all kind of about you and what you're doing and the journey that you're going on. Yeah, that would be my number one piece of advice.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of research around that area. In that as women, we question our kind of value a lot more than men, and that definitely can be something that can, hold you back from a psychological point of view within sports. So yeah, thanks for bringing that one up.
No, it's
Okay,
okay.
and at the moment, what are some of the topics you feel most strongly about within sport?
I think definitely making sure that younger athletes don't get burnt out, and kind of aren't dropping out of sport at a very young age. And again, this does play into kind of female sport more, is that young women and girls feel like they need to, or they can't kind of continue with a sport that they're enjoying, because there aren't kind of the there isn't the coaching or the groups available to them in for any kind of an environment that they feel comfortable in to continue in sport. And actually, I think that's definitely an issue that is gaining more kind of awareness and traction now, but is something that I feel very passionately about, is making sure that we keep kind of younger athletes in the sport, whether that's running or hockey or cycling or whatever it is, and making sure that they don't get kind of overtrained, and their bodies aren't falling apart by the time they're 18. So that's definitely kind of one of the things that I've been pretty passionate about in sport.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah, really, really important stuff. Okay, and so now if we start off with the episode. So, why did you get into running? How did this come about?
So I think it's a fairly different journey, mine, that I think other people may have found. But I think if we take it way back to when I was a lot younger, I did a bit of kind of cross country for school, at a very young age. I can't even remember the first cross country I did, but I think I was must have been about 10. And I think I came third or something, a very local cross country. And I was like, oh, okay, I might be all right at this. And then actually I did a few more for school. And I think I won those. And I was like, oh right, I might be all right, I might be quite good. And then I went to the English schools cross country, and managed to get myself there. And I do remember going to that, and I think I came in the hundreds place. So it was an absolute disaster. I was like, wow, everybody is so good. I don't think that this is necessarily the sport for me. So yeah, when I was a lot younger, I did a bit of kind of competing and running at school, but it wasn't anything that I really felt like I was going to take forward. So I then went into hockey and ended up playing that all the way through school and university. And then after university, when I went in to play to play professionally, so Great Britain and England. After which I unfortunately suffered some kind of fairly large injuries to my hips, which meant that it got to the point where I couldn't really continue with anything that involved a lot of change of direction, and kind of really extreme loading like that. And I made the decision to leave the hockey, and I found that I was running a lot more. Mainly, I think, because I needed my mind to kind of focus on something else. As in, like, I'm sure a lot of athletes find that once they stop doing something, they need to focus on something else. Just, it's the way our brains are wired. So I then started doing a few kind of, I think I did a few run throughs initially, which were great events. And I was basically trying to chip down my 5K time, thinking that that was kind of a good goal that I could work towards. And then I basically ran a fairly fast time at one of them, and was picked up by Belgrave, and my coach, Charlie Dickinson, who is now still my coach. And the rest is kind of history, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And, just to provide a bit of context here, when she says, quite a decent 5K, we're talking about 17:24 in January, followed by a 16:39 in March, followed by a 15:49 in April. So,
Yeah.
pretty fast, pretty fast. Gosh, so that that must have been really tough. You've had a senior and professional career playing hockey. I'm sure there was quite a strong element of team. How did you cope during that time when you got injured? And, can you talk us through where your head was at?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, to start out, every injury is difficult for anyone, whether you're kind of trying to get out and do a couch to 5K or you're playing professional sport. It always has a bit of an impact on your kind of your life and your mental well-being and all of that. So I think personally for me, it was when I injured myself the first time, because there were unfortunately multiple injuries. I would say I managed quite well. I thought this is an opportunity basically for me to get stronger and kind of do a lot of work in the gym. We had amazing staff and physios and S&C people within the hockey program who were very committed to kind of getting you back on the pitch. And so they really helped me kind of rehab my hip, make it better, and get me back on the pitch. Obviously, during that time, it was about 6 months that I was out. It was quite difficult. I think more from the point of view that you see your team playing the sport that you love playing every day, and you can't be involved in that. And so it is a challenge to just kind of basically watch from the sidelines. And I think as well during that time, it was the Commonwealth Games that summer, and the England women's team obviously won gold there, which was an incredible achievement, and just the most amazing group and bunch of girls. And so I think that also did in effect make it slightly harder just to be kind of sitting at home being like, oh gosh, yeah, I'm still injured. I can't really be involved in this as I wanted to. So yeah, it was definitely a challenging time, and something that I could kind of pick myself back up after the first injury. But then when the second and third ones came along, that was when I started to think, oh gosh, I'm really kind of not sure how much more I can take in terms of basically not playing sport. And I just felt like I was repeatedly damaging myself. And I guess that's what kind of ended up leading me to say, actually, this is enough. I don't want to kind of put my body through that type of kind of injury anymore. And ultimately is why I left that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and, really tough, especially things like the Commonwealth Gold, things like that. Yeah, must have been really, really difficult. And in terms of the injuries you're referring a lot to kind of your hips and stuff. Was it a reoccurring injury, or do you have any ideas as how that kind of came about?
Yeah, it's a reoccurring injury. It happened. It's called a. I won't get too kind of down into the detail, but it's something called a labral tear, which basically means that your hip joint, and it's actually quite common in runners. Um, but it means that the lining of your hip joint, there's a little tear in it, which basically just messes everything up. To be honest, just to put it broadly. But so I had that on my right hand side, and then I rehabbed that back up, and I was fine. And then it happened on my left, um, and so basically it was just reoccurring injuries in that area, which since touchwood, since running, been absolutely fine, no problems. So I think running in a straight line is definitely suiting me more than having to keep up with some unbelievable skills that the girls had, and change direction, all of that. So yeah, it's been all right so far.
Oh, great to hear, and that it's definitely a sign then, running's the one. And I
Yeah.
guess, a final kind of thought, there's some talk, especially at the moment, about potentially areas such as the hips being a higher injury prone area, especially in women. Do you think that maybe there's any element of the general kind of lack of knowledge as to kind of female biomechanics and stuff that may have been a contributing factor in you getting those injuries?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I think it was kind of almost like my biomechanics that weren't picked up when I was a baby. So I think that there probably needs to be a lot more done in terms of research into girls at a very young age, kind of infancy, making sure that everything is kind of moving as it should, and working properly, especially in an area kind of as important as your hips, and that kind of thing. So I think there's definitely more research that could be done into female specific kind of biomechanics, and making sure that there's an understanding of how things like our hormones and kind of all of that plays into injury. As I know, there's been a lot of talk about ACL injury and how that's a lot more prevalent in female athletes than male athletes. And actually, I mean, obviously ACL injuries still happen to women, but I think now there's a bit of a better understanding. There's more exercises that can be done to kind of strengthen those areas of anyone who might be more susceptible to them. So, yeah, the same goes for kind of other areas of the body. I think there's a lot more research that could be done to make sure that these injuries don't happen at all. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned there, biomechanics sorting it out as kind of as young as being a baby. Do you think, I mean, is there anything that you've since learned in terms of your own biomechanics, or do you have any thoughts on potentially reasons as to why it may have came about in terms of maybe footwear or something like that?
I do, yeah, I don't actually think it was anything to do with footwear. I think it was, I don't know, I'm sure many people have had it, but hip dysplasia is quite common in, I mean, a lot of people, but it's often not picked up if it's quite mild, which I think happened with me, and means that because it wasn't picked up early, it then couldn't be kind of corrected, which meant that I was definitely more susceptible to things like labral tears when I was doing a lot of kind of change of direction. And it's also the nature of hockey, especially at that level as well. You are constantly in kind of flex positions, you're moving up and down, side to side. The risks are kind of quite large in that area. So yeah, I think it's definitely important for people to kind of get as big of an understanding about their bodies and how they're moving early on, so that they can kind of prevent injuries as they get a bit older.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so as you made that decision, okay, I'm going to leave hockey, at that point in time, was it in your mind that you were maybe going to stop sport? And how long of a transition period did you have between deciding you were ending hockey and starting up with, having running as that main focus?
I'll be honest, it was honestly about a week. I couldn't. I think the way I'm wired is that I love sport, and I think I always knew that I was going to kind of continue with sport in some way. It just wouldn't necessarily be at that level, and I think I definitely left hockey thinking I maybe just need a little bit of a break, and then I'm going to go back to hockey, but not in such a kind of extreme way, so that I can just kind of look after myself a bit more. And I've always kind of loved running, and I've used running as a bit of a release from kind of just general stress and kind of all of that, those kind of things, which I know a lot of people do. So I just started running a little bit afterwards in the kind of the following weeks, and then actually I thought, oh, you know what, I'm going to give this a good go, because I'd always been fairly good at running within hockey. So we do fitness tests and we do all of that kind of thing, and I was yeah, a bit of an anomaly, I think, in terms of the results I'd get. And my S&C coach, actually, who is an absolute legend, but he was always kind of actually pushing me on and being like, oh, you get a bit faster here, like you could do something kind of, you could like basically just kind of gave me a little bit of confidence as to be like, you're really quite good at running. And that kind of played in the back of my mind where I was like, you know what, I may as well give it a go. If I do a race and I come last, then that's absolutely fine. I'll just kind of keep ticking along with running and it'll be something that I still enjoy. And then actually, it just turned out that I went to my first little like run through 5K in Regent's Park actually. And yeah, somehow put out a 17. So I think it was, what was it, 17:24, I think.
Yeah, 17:24.
Yeah. And before that, I'd never run anything more than about 18:15 for 5K, which was still obviously fairly quick. But I surprised myself there. And so actually I was like, right, I'm gonna give this a go and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And give it a go. You definitely give it the hell out of the go there. So
yeah.
And so I guess, 17:24, amazing start point. But then a 16:39, only 2 months later, can you talk us through maybe anything that changed or how you think you managed to bring your time down so significantly in such a short period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually think a lot of credit has to go to my boyfriend Jack, who runs himself, and he's actually a duathlete, so he does a bit of both. But I kind of said to him like, oh, I think I should give it a go, and obviously he was very supportive, encouraging, being like, yes, absolutely. So he was giving me a few sessions that he used to do with his kind of running group. Was like, why don't you try these out? So I was kind of doing a bit more of a session based program rather than what I'd been doing before, which was just kind of going out and running 5K, thinking that that was going to make me faster, which it wouldn't really. So I started doing kind of more like K reps, and what else was I doing? I was doing some kind of 400s, basically more specific running sessions alongside easy runs. And I think that definitely in between that 17:24 and then when I did the 16:24, that definitely helped me kind of knock my time down in that kind of chunk of time. So it was definitely going from that kind of just going out and running and expecting to get faster, moving over to doing kind of 2 sessions a week, and easy runs alongside that, which I'd never thought about doing before because I basically just didn't know anything. I had to kind of get myself a watch, like a Garmin watch, which I actually still use my boyfriend's old one. So I don't have a new one. So I was like, right, I'll just use this one. And it's done quite well. But yeah, I had to kind of understand and learn a bit more about what shoes I should be wearing, because that had never really come into my brain before. All I owned was Astros, and I was like, well, I can't run in those. So yeah, it was a bit more of kind of learning about running as well as being given those sessions from him that definitely made me quicker in that kind of short space of time.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And, it all makes sense. It is hard to know all these things. And sounds like, Jack should start selling these plans now.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good opportunity for some cash.
I know, don't tell him that. I'll be like, oh gosh.
Yeah. Okay, so, it came to March, you ran, well under 17, 16:39, amazing stuff. Were you expecting that? Was that, where did that rank in terms of your expectations?
I don't think I was expecting that time. I don't think I was expecting as fast as that. I think I was going into it saying I'd like to come out with something that began with a 16, but I was more thinking kind of 16:59, and kind of just tipping into that. But I did the 16:39, or wherever it was at Battersea Park, and actually the course is really nice there. Like it's 2 laps, super flat, often quite a few fast people run in it. And so I basically just set out and thought I'll try and kind of cling on to the person in front of me. And they ended up absolutely dropping me. And I was just running on my own. But I think the course, the nature of the course, as well as just having a bit of grit and going for it, helped me out there. Yeah, definitely. But I did I did surprise myself, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And did you change anything again moving on from that performance ahead of April, where you then went below 16?
Yes. So that was definitely where I think I kind of saw my improvement really kind of get a lot bigger. And felt myself getting a lot faster is when I joined Belgrave, which is the club I run for, and the group I run with at the moment, who train down in Battersea. I was actually quite lucky because my now coach was watching that race at Battersea, as one of the other girls in our training group was running it. So he was there, he saw me run in and was a bit surprised, I think, basically going, who are you? And I actually then got in contact with him at Belgrave and said, oh, can I come down for a session? And he said, yes, absolutely. Saw you run at Battersea, come down and see how you get on. And yeah, I was a bit nervous to go to my first session. I wasn't really kind of sure how I do, and what the kind of general atmosphere was going to be like. But yes, I went to that first session, and they continue to be the best club ever, and a really great group of people. So I really enjoyed it there. So obviously stayed, and then just felt myself getting faster and faster running with people, which I hadn't done before. And I think that made a real difference, is running in a group and being able to kind of push each other was something that I hadn't experienced before, because I had just been doing sessions on my own. And so I think that was definitely the key thing that took me from the 16:39 to the 15:49, as well as the fact that I was running it in spikes and on a track, which is always a little bit faster, I find, than the road. But yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess alongside all of this, it must be still kind of, or it must have been still quite fresh in your mind, the change from having left hockey, having left being a full-time professional athlete. At this point, what was the situation in terms of, life in general, and potentially any looking back on hockey?
So at that point, when I joined Belgrave, I was about to start a full-time job. So I kind of had to reset myself, because I'd been in full-time work before I went into hockey. So I almost had to do a bit of a 180 and go back to full-time work and kind of rewire my brain into how that would all work, and how I could kind of train and recover alongside the kind of the 9 to 5. So I definitely I think I was excited about what was to come. I also think that when I was looking back at hockey at that point, I kind of didn't, I don't know, I didn't look back at it in any other way than being kind of thinking that taught me a lot, about kind of myself as an athlete, and was an incredible experience. And actually, I also made some really great friends in that team, within the team. And so for me, and they've all been so supportive of the running, and I think are really just really excited that I found that kind of avenue which just works for me. And so yeah, at that point I wasn't really looking back at hockey in any other way than, I think that was it was a very good decision to kind of leave when I did, but also just thinking, wow, like there was a great group of people there, I learned a lot, and it kind of only put me in a better position moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear. And it's great to see how you've been able to take the positives from the situation. And I guess we're a bit further down the line. Since then You've had some incredible achievements, such as your first England vest. For anyone who doesn't know about that experience, Kate took a brilliant 9:06 at her first 3,000, winning at the Loughborough International. Do you want to walk us through that experience quickly? I can see a great big smile on your face.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was, I can't remember when exactly it was. I think it was after the comeback race where I ran that 15:49 that I then was, I mean, lucky enough to be picked for England to run at Loughborough International in the 3,000. And obviously incredibly exciting, very unexpected. I wasn't really, I wasn't, I wasn't expecting that so soon. And so I'm very grateful for that opportunity for sure. And it was also my kind of first experience of a proper athletics event. I'd never kind of, I didn't know what a cool room was. I had to ask somebody what that was. I was like, what is a cool room? Why do I have to be there 10 minutes before the track? Like what happens in this room? Obviously in most cases it's not even a room, it's just some chairs. But yeah, I had to get used to kind of all of the lingo and everything that is kind of around those type of events. But yeah, the race itself was amazing. I had to kind of have a bit of a talk with myself because I think often you can kind of psych yourself out a little bit, especially when the pressure's on and you're in an England vest. And I really felt in my head, I was like, I've got to win this because I'm in an England vest and I can't like come further back. I was like, right, I've got to win this. And there was some really great athletes in that race. There was Inez Fitzgerald, who I think has been on the podcast, and is super talented. So she was running as well, and I think I just kind of dug in, followed them for the majority, and then in the last 400, I think I've always known that I've got a bit of a kick at the end. So I think the kind of the occasion as well as a bit of determination took over, and I managed to win it, which was amazing. And I had the best day. So yeah, just an incredible experience, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there a couple of things like the cool room. Have there been any other things that have surprised you or, key learning points since coming to running?
Yeah. So yeah, one of the key things that kind of surprised me within running was definitely that people think it's quite individual as a sport. And that's actually something that I haven't found. I think that the running community as a whole is really welcoming, but also kind of really social. And even though you're all kind of competing against each other, like I've already found that I've met some really great people. And I haven't once felt, I mean, yes, when you're in the race, you are performing individually. But actually, as soon as the race finishes or before it's even started, you're always kind of warming up with people, and kind of cooling down with other people, having conversations. And there's definitely a real like buzz and a team aspect to it that I think kind of gets lost a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of that, do you feel that running is more competitive, or was hockey more competitive? Or, what are your thoughts around kind of the whole competition side of things?
Well, I mean, there's a lot more people who are running than there are people playing hockey. Um, and I think that also comes down to the fact that running's a little bit more accessible. Obviously, you can just kind of put on your trainers and go out for a run, whereas hockey, you need a hockey stick, which is again quite expensive. You need shin pads, you need a gum shield, like you need all of this equipment to kind of go out and be able to play it. Whereas running, you can just put on your shoes and go out, which is obviously brilliant, and makes it a kind of accessible.
Yeah, no, definitely. Your mindset as well,
Yes.
perhaps it being a second sport, do you feel that there's any difference in kind of how you approach it?
Yeah, so I think running, well, I've said this actually in a lot of cases, but actually the level that I got to with hockey, as much as it is a team sport, I think that once you get to that level, a lot of it is individual because you are competing against other people for selection. And actually, even though obviously you are playing in a team and with others in a team, there is a lot of focus on your individual performance, A, by yourself, but also by your coach, because they're looking at you and comparing you to other people in the team. And will you get selected for this? Will you not? So I'd say that the competitiveness that comes with kind of worrying about your individual performance against other people is actually quite similar in running and hockey. Well, at least I think I found that. So I guess I'm kind of used to focusing on my performance, which has been quite helpful for running. And I guess you do have to change your mindset slightly in the fact that there are not many variables in running. It's just you and the track or the road or the hill. Whereas hockey, you have to be really switched on to all of your surroundings. There could be a kind of a hockey ball flying at your head if you don't turn around at the right time. And you've got to be kind of constantly communicating with your teammates to make sure that everybody knows what's going on the pitch. So there's definitely a change in mindset that has to happen between being aware of your surroundings completely and then actually being kind of hyper focused on the next step that you're taking in running. So yeah, that's definitely what I'd say.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And apologies, at this point, my internet completely cut out on me. So we had to revert to just a phone call. But Kate's going to share some of her training. So hopefully the audio is okay, but there's some really great stuff coming up. So to the episode. No, it sounds like potentially, is there some level of kind of maybe relief in running in that, knowing it's just you and your performance and there's no one else to kind of have to worry about or a spot that you're trying to defend specifically?
Yes, I would. I think it's more that you just have to, that if you get a good time or you place well in a race, that you've had a good performance. And I think sometimes you can still have a good performance in a team sport, but the team could lose, and that can always be a little bit frustrating. Or the team could win, but you've had a really bad performance, and then you're a bit kind of down in the dumps about that. So I think what I like about running in that respect is that you can just go out and where you come and where you like what time you get is very kind of transparent in how you've performed, and I quite like that.
Yeah, definitely. And would you say as well that perhaps there's any benefits that you've been able to take from your experience as a GB hockey player into running, maybe in terms of recovery or mindset?
Yeah, I think mindset is a big one. I would say I'm a very determined and kind of gritty person, and that's definitely come from hockey and also kind of training every day and having to put in really good performances or be your best in every training session. And it definitely takes a certain type of person to be able to do that, but it also takes a certain type of mindset to go out and kind of give everything in every session, whether it's a really minor training session on a Tuesday morning or whether it's a kind of a huge game that's really important. I think that's definitely something that I kind of can translate from hockey, is that actually when I'm training for running, and I had this thought yesterday when I was doing a session, and I was doing a pretty hard rep, and I was like, oh, I could ease off. And then a bit of me kind of also said, no, but if you ease off, that's not going to help you later down the line. Like, you need to train like you would race. And so I managed to kind of speed myself up a little bit. Definitely helped by everyone around me, but I think that's definitely a thing, is that you kind of need to train as you would play a really important match, or you need to train as you would run a really important race. It's definitely a mindset that I've got.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, that's really great to hear. And while we're on the topic of training, would you be able to talk us through kind of your typical training week and what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I definitely have a long way to go in terms of kind of what my training week looks like. And I'm sure it's probably different to those who are running professionally, because unfortunately I don't quite have that luxury yet. But I'll usually do around 4 or 5, usually around 4 easy runs a week. Sometimes I'll actually do 3, depending on how many sessions I'm doing. I'll usually do a kind of punchier session on a Tuesday, along with the Belgrave group. And then I'll do another session on a Thursday. This one is usually a bit shorter and sometimes can get dropped if I've got a race at the weekend, which is usually the case in the track season, and also probably now in the winter season as well. And then I will also sometimes do some kind of tempo running on a Saturday morning. Those are kind of my main 3 sessions of the week. Whether or not I do all 3 just depends on what I have coming up that week race-wise. And then, kind of alongside that, I'll just do lots of easy running, making sure that my heart rate doesn't go too high, and that I'm not running too fast, which is definitely something I've had to learn to do. I was running kind of stupidly fast in my easy runs when I started out, and actually it was not beneficial for me, and I've kind of had to train myself to run at an actual easy pace, when I'm kind of now trying to get faster, so I can actually save myself for sessions and make sure that I'm not knackered when I get to them. And then I'll usually do a longer run, obviously easy on a Sunday, just to kind of take my mileage up a little bit for the week. But I've definitely got room to kind of grow my weekly mileage as I get a bit more kind of experience. But I think for now it's important for me not to kind of do too much too soon, as I'm quite new to the sport. But
yeah, no, definitely. It's always safest to err on the side of caution when it comes to these things. And would you say so far have you kind of found a session that you enjoy the most, or something that's worked especially well for you?
I actually really love the shorter stuff. So anything like 200s or 400s, kind of, it might be, I've done a 12 by 400 session before, which was actually quite a lot. But there's an 8 by 400 session, which I really enjoy. And I think there's also like a 12 by 200 session, which I really like, just because I think that really helps with my speed and actually translates quite well into racing, because I know that when it gets to the last 200 of a race, I've kind of got that kick that if I need to rely on it, then I can. So that's definitely a session that I enjoy on the track. It's a bit harder to do 200s on the road, so you're not really sure where you're going. But that's definitely one that I've enjoyed doing this summer, and has helped me kind of get a bit of more speed into my legs.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, in terms of training there, you mentioned some great sessions. Would you say that, now having run and done that type of training, do you feel fitter running, or did you feel more fit when you played hockey?
Oh, I definitely feel fitter now. I think with hockey, this is just quite funny as well. Like, the most we had running sessions within hockey, but they were never more than about 3K max. So it was quite an adjustment having to go from kind of sessions that in my head were of 3K to doing sessions that are about 8, 9 or 10K in volume. which definitely took a bit of getting used to. I'd be kind of looking at my watch, being like, oh, God, this is quite a long one. But obviously that's very normal. So I feel a lot fitter now, and I'm just I think I'm just happier in general because I'm doing something that I really, really love, and I can feel that there's a lot of potential and improvement that's just kind of waiting to happen. So it's exciting. It's definitely an exciting time.
Yeah, definitely. And, on that kind of note, you mentioned before maybe moving more to hockey as a result of not performing as well, especially, you mentioned the English schools race. Do you think that there were any other reasons or barriers as to why you didn't perform at the level that you're, now performing as a senior when you were a junior?
I think I didn't have a strength base. Obviously, when I was that young, I wasn't lifting weights in the gym. And actually, the good thing about being injured within the GB program with hockey was that I just spent about 6 months consistently in the gym every day, and it actually has given me a really good strength base for now running, and I think that's kind of really, really helped me kind of push on getting those faster times. I also think I was just a crazy 10-year-old trying to do every sport under the sun that was available to me, and so I was probably absolutely knackered. I mean, like, I've got no idea how I did it. You'd be going to running after you'd gone to hockey or you'd had netball or something like that, and I was very lucky to have all of those sports available to me at school, and kind of having parents who were very willing to take me kind of around to different clubs and that kind of thing. But I think I basically just was doing everything, and it meant that when it came to running, I was a bit like, oh, this is just kind of another thing, another race that I'm doing for school, and I'll try my best, but like it's not the end of the world. So I never really kind of had that passion and that drive to want to kind of chase times as a youngster, definitely.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Wanting it is definitely half the battle for sure. And, you touch on there kind of the opportunities, that being something that you mentioned earlier on, and burnout and stuff as well. Do you think that if you had fallen into running at a younger age, that you would be performing as well as you are now, that you would have the strength and the kick that you've also referred to a few times?
It's really hard to say, to be honest. I think that I imagine that I would still be doing it, but I don't think that I would have had the kind of success. I don't want to call it success because obviously it's like it's very
it's success. I think we can call it.
Relative though. It's all relative, but I don't think I would have kind of improved as much as I have over the last 6 months if I'd kind of been running consistently and hadn't done any other sport. I think those kind of experiences from playing different sports has really helped me out now when I've come to I've finally settled on a sport that I can kind of see hopefully having a fairly long career in. So yeah.
Definitely. And, we're coming to the end of our time now. And so maybe on a final note, is there perhaps something, maybe, your happiest memory with running so far, or something that you've really enjoyed, especially, having since come to running?
It's definitely the people that I've met being a really big one. And actually that's kind of fostered a real enjoyment of the sport straight from the off. I've got a really, really great training group in Belgrave. I've got a really fantastic coach who also cares about me as a person, I think, as well as obviously an athlete, which is really important to me. And I've had a great opportunity to meet some incredible athletes who, again, probably don't even know that I exist, but actually kind of even like meeting some of the people that I've seen run in the Olympics and that kind of thing, and a race with them was Yeah, there have been some fantastic people that I've met, and I've definitely kind of, I'm really, really grateful for that and I've really enjoyed that so far.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the podcast. It's been great to, hear about your incredible story, and, we wish you all the very best with, those goals and the rest of your running journey.
Thank you so much for having me on here, Indira, and hopefully it's a good episode for the listeners.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Kate. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, be sure to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. This really helps to get the content out there. And I want to make this podcast the best possible for you. So go follow Fitter, Faster, Happier on Instagram. That's Fitter, Faster, Happier, to leave your questions, comments, and feedback, and for updates and guest requests. All the best for the week ahead, guys. Run happy, live happy, be happy.